So this whole thing began way back. I was 16. That was back in 2000. That was the first time I had the vision of Jeshua that appeared in front of me. And I didn't know the name Jeshua at that time, but I knew it was Christ. I knew it was Jesus the Christ. And I'm not a religious person. I never was sucked into the modern mainstream Western religion. And obviously this experience baffled me quite a bit. And he introduced himself to me as Jeshua. And that's how it all started. Following that, when I came out of that experience, the strangest reaction I remember getting was the reaction from the family dog. The dog was staring at me. The whole night through, she was just lying there, fixated on me. It was rather unsettling. And she would come up, circle me, sniff me, lie down, and stare at me. That was very surreal. And following that was a few days later that I stopped eating. And it wasn't that I didn't want to eat, that I was nauseous or sick or something. It's just I didn't have an appetite for anything. I felt I didn't need to eat. And it went on for several days, and my mom started getting worried because here's the 16-year-old daughter that's not eating anything. And I told her that I felt fine. I wasn't worried about it at all. I still went out. I still went on walks. I was still doing my horse riding. I was never feeling weak. And my mother, being concerned for me, she took me to someone that works with chakra balancing. And the strange thing was, when they checked my chakras, there was nothing there. There was nothing open. There was nothing moving. Every single chakra was just dead. And they wanted to reopen them. And again, I was very against that because I told them that I felt perfectly fine. I really felt good. So I left it at that. And it was just over a week after that incident that it was about 2 in the morning when I suddenly woke up and I was hungry. And I remember I went into the pantry at early morning hours and I ate crackers and apples. And after that, when they rechecked my chakras a few days after that, all of them were open and hyperactive. So something happened there that I'm still not completely sure of. And then it was only about a year later that the automatic writing started. When I was sitting in my room and I was writing, just writing my book, when my hands suddenly started going off on its own accord. And it was Jeshua. And we began communicating like this. We began communicating through writing. And I still have all those books. I still have all those notebooks. And you can see the difference between the handwriting that he brings through and the handwriting of mine. There's a huge difference. It's actually quite difficult to read. And that carried on for years. And it was the one thing that he told me when I asked him, what can he teach me? What can he tell me? How can I further this process along? Because I wanted him as my teacher, not as a savior. I wanted him as my teacher. But I also didn't want to be influenced by religion, by spiritual groups, by other people. I wanted to have a clear communication. And I'll never forget that. He said, that's very simple. Just do what I tell you. Just do what I tell you. And that was amazing because I did exactly that. And some of the things were very scary. He told me up to 3 times a year for many years, he told me to go out into the desert just with a bottle of water and a sleeping bag, and that was it. And I went out for days on end. And that taught me something. That taught me about my own mind and how the mind influences messages coming from beyond. So to everyone who has a gift of channeling or who wants to channel, if you want to perfect that, one of the first things I'll tell you is stop channeling. Because I started doing that, and as I said, he was sending me out into the desert. He was telling me to go wandering. He told me where to go study. He told me what to study, which books to read, to the point that I ended up in the States. I had a teacher there for some time. I learned outdoor skills, survival skills. I learned how to be completely independent in nature. And I was there for about just over a year. And I had a sacred pipe. I made my sacred pipe along with him. And I had that pipe for 20 years. Back in 2022, I went out into the desert and I went to a very sacred site, a site that was very powerful to me. It was one of the places Jeshua took me to for numerous reasons. And I raised my pipe, and I had that pipe for 20 years, and on this day I dropped it and it broke right at the connection base between the bowl and the stem. And I knew exactly what that meant. My teacher had told me a long time ago, when your pipe breaks, it's time to move on to other things. And for a few months, I tried not to accept that. I tried to make up other reasons, other excuses. But in the end, all those teachings that I got in the States became very superficial, and I just didn't connect to them anymore. I still carry them in heart. They taught me a lot. They moved me along. But then it so happened that Jeshua popped up and said, "That's done. Now we move to the next thing." So it took me 20 years. And it was only in 2024, when I was 40, that I began considering to do open channeling. And it was only the year after this year, 2025, that I started doing open channeling. So for anyone out there who is got the gift of channeling or who wants to start channeling, first advice I would really give that is very important is to stop. Because channeling can be very misleading. It can actually cause more harm than good. If you do not know your own mind, if you cannot control and analyze your own mind. Because remember, channeling is getting messages from beyond. And these messages from beyond have to filter through your mind for you to be able to pass them on. And if your mind is filled with preconceived ideas, preconceived narratives on how things should work, on how a person should be, how the times are going, if your mind is filled with all of that, when that message filters through, it's going to attach to your own perspective. Meaning you're going to deliver a message that's not necessarily clear, it is more an affirmation of what you believe. And this is the case with many people that channel. I have been around channelers, and let me tell you, the majority, they always give the same messages. Why? Because it's filtering through a mind, and they have been conditioned by previous incidences, by their own life, by whatever books they read. And I think back, and they just started channeling because they say they have the gift. And I look back to me when it happened, and Jeshua said, "Do as I tell you." And I took more than 20 years to simply be alone and to be trained to understand how I can cut out my own thoughts, own perspective, so that when the messages of Jeshua come out, they are clear, they are pure. They're not influenced by me. I want to be told when I am being influenced by my own mind, because remember, the mind is a very sneaky little bastard. It sneaks in and it tries to affirm itself. And it's really great to affirm itself through an unseen, unheard voice that requires no evidence in regards to the speaker. It's very satisfying. So the biggest danger with channeling, with most people when they channel today, is that they don't have a clear concept of their own thoughts and mind and the influence that has on their messages. Over the years in my channeling, I've discovered that Jeshua's messages are not always wonderful and loving and feathery words. I find that with a lot of channelers, it's always these feathery words and moving to a higher frequency, etc., etc. And Jeshua is, as the years went on, Jeshua became more and more direct with his teachings. And sometimes it's been very harsh. He's not scared to tell me that my mind or my thoughts are actually dysfunctional and that I have to work on that. And people don't like that. People want to be catered, want to be made to feel good. And as Jeshua said to me, that was the reason he only had so many disciples. He didn't have thousands of people. A lot of people wanted to learn from him, but when it comes to that point, people veer away because they don't want to be challenged. And that's what he meant when he said, if you want to follow me, you've got to give up everything. You've got to stop thinking the way you do. You have to be prepared to challenge yourself in your beliefs, your ideas. So I've started recording the channelings, and yes, they can be very harsh, but I do hope they make you consider things. Jeshua told me, when you are comfortable and happy and receive flowery words, you have no ambition to strive because you're content. That is why he throws into the pool criticism and evidence to show me how I am so enslaved by my own thoughts, by my own beliefs. Because when you realize that, as I have realized that, you strive because you want to make that right. So if you are a channeler, really consider this. And yes, it takes a while. It took me 20 years. And I still feel I'm not through with it yet. Nothing worth having comes easy.